So welcome all of you for the fourth session of Gita Samvad, a summary study on Bhagavad Gita. Today we'll be moving toward next section, and the next section would be about creation, about the existence of the creator. So in the first session we discussed about the purpose of human form of life, and also we discussed that happiness is one such thing which everyone is looking for, and we also concluded that it is spirituality which makes a person really happy, and spirituality is a conglomeration of many different universal principles. I think somebody is not able to hear, but everybody is able to hear. I think there's some problem at your side. Can you please check, Manasji? So in the next two session we discussed about our own existence, that who we are with this body. We discovered in the second session how we are not this body, by different ideas, by different understanding from a verse from Bhagavad Gita 2.13. And the next session we discussed about who we actually are. We are consciousness, we are a soul, and it is body is like a covering over me, and body is compared to a car, and I am compared to a driver. So it just clears a very basic understanding about our own existence and about our purpose. My purpose and who am I is the one thing, in the two fundamental things which we cleared in the first three sessions. So going forward in the next two sessions, starting today, we'll be discussing about something outside us. So in this entire universe, I exist, that we discussed, and universe exists. Universal existence and the creator of universe, and how this universe came about, what's the purpose of creation and everything. So these are the questions we are going to touch upon in the next two sessions. So the first module of this section is intelligent design. So today we'll be discovering something very fundamental about our own creation we are living in. So as all of us knows that the scientists always have this task of explaining and discovering and trying to give us different formulas, different understanding why this universe exists. So as we know, there are group of scientists who agrees on a point that this creation happens on its own. It just came into existence. There is no purpose, there is no creator, there is no basically atheistic scientist. They does not want to bring God into the picture, and they don't want anybody to say that it is the God, it is somebody is there, somebody has created this creation is not came on its own. They find different theories, they find different discoveries, they do different research work so that they can deny the existence of God himself. And one such famous theory, as we all know, is a theory of Big Bang theory. So this Big Bang theory, as we know, is a very simplistic understanding. At a point, infinite temperature, infinite pressure, it just exploded. There's a big bang happened, explosion happened, and from this explosion came this entire universe. From this explosion came life, from this explosion came vegetation, from this explosion came everything basically what we see around us. So there is another group of scientists who debunk this theory, and they say it is not so. It is not that there is no creator, there is no purpose, and there is no design to it. It just cannot happen on its own. It just cannot be the result of this small Big Bang theory. So one such scientist, his name is Dr. George Wald, and he goes on to say different logics. There's a book written by him. He's a Nobel laureate in physiology, in medicine in Harvard University. So this session is going to be touching upon a little bit of scientific thing. If anybody is not able to understand, we can clarify it further. And just don't think that if you are not able to understand everything, you're losing something. So but just we are trying to derive some important points. Those points are important, and rest detailing you may avoid if not able to understand. Doesn't matter much. So this Dr. George Wald says he gives different logics. He gives different logics to prove there is some intelligent design which is existing in this creation. The first logic what he gives is he basically starts from micro to the macro level. What he says is basically he gives the example of mass of atom. As we know, the smallest indivisible particle, now it is different. Now we used to study atomic particles, right? So in that micro level, we have atoms, we have electrons, we have protons, and we have neutrons. It is combination of these three things. So he study the structure of an atom at a very micro level, and he explains there is something very fundamental, there is something very unique, there is something very intriguing which we should all look for. First thing he says about the mass of an atom, or I would say mass of electron and mass of proton. As we know, many of us would have studied chemistry, that mass of proton is much more higher than the mass of electron. And for this reason, whole of the mass of an atom is concentrated in the center, and electrons revolve around it. Because of huge mass difference, the proton remains in the center and the electron revolves around it. And because the electron revolves around it, the proton does not revolve around because it has more mass because of the pushing and pulling forces between each other. And because of that, we can have solid structure. Let's imagine they had very less difference in mass. What would happen? Both of them will spin around each other. And once they spin around each other, there will be no solid structure. And if we don't have solid structure, we don't see any stability around. So just because of this change in mass of electron and proton, we have the solid structure today. The first logic he gives, very simple. He says it's because of that we are able to have the solidity what we see around us. Otherwise it would have been all fluid, because both of them will spin around each other. The second logic what he gives is the charge on proton and electron. He says although the mass is huge, there is a huge difference in the masses, but in the charge they are equal and opposite. Let's say if it was not equal and opposite, what would happen? Let's say electron was having more charge. So electron will induce the electricity around and it will not be a neutral state. So if we are able to see any neutrality, there is no predisposition toward one particular charge in the universe, it's because of equal and opposite charge of electron and proton. Same atom have two fundamental particle, proton and electron, huge difference of mass make it stable, and equal and opposite charge make it neutral. So he gives this very beautiful idea to make us understand how there is something great working around us which we are not able to experience and able to see. The third example, that's what we just discussed, equal and opposite charges of electron and proton. The third example what he gives us is a anomalous expansion of water. So he just goes on to a little more higher level. So he started from basic electron, proton, atom, and then he's going to compounds. One of the compound what we see around is hydrogen and oxygen combines together to make water. Every compound and element have a property that as you decrease their temperature, their density keeps increasing. A very normal physics law. That as you decrease its temperature, their density will start increasing, right? Water follows this rule till 4 degrees Celsius. As the water start becoming cooler, it start becoming heavier. But after 4 degrees Celsius, as it drops down temperature below 4 degrees Celsius, what happens? It starts becoming less dense. And because it becomes less dense, then what happens? Very interesting thing happens. Because of this anomalous behavior of water. So after 4 degrees, it does not change. Then what happens? Ice can float on water. Because lighter thing floats, right? If we have the mix of higher and lower density, the lower density thing will float. So now because the ice is lower in density than the water, it can float. And what happens if they can float? See, very interesting thing happens because of ice floating. Because of ice floating, we have the sheet of ocean covered by thin layer of ice. Let's say if it was continue to increase its density, so the entire ocean will freeze. And if entire ocean freezes, they can't melt even during the summertime. And do we really can have aquatics? No. So the existence of aquatics is only because of this small anomalous behavior of water. If it was not there, then we cannot see any aquatics. Because it formed that thin layer of ice, and rest everything becomes normal temperature as the aquatics lives around the water. So it goes on to say from micro to the macro structure. Beautiful example he gives. So the fourth example, because we discussed 3 examples, right? Equal and opposite charges of atom, of the electron and proton, huge disparity in masses, so it is anomalous behavior of water. The fourth example, what he gives, Dr. George Ward, he gives the opposing forces of gravity and expansion and Big Bang. So according to Big Bang, everything expands. And according to gravity, everything comes towards each other. So let's say if the force of gravity was to take over the force of Big Bang, what would happen? Everything will become shrink. If force of gravity is more than the Big Bang force or the expanding force, then everything will shrink. On the opposite hand, if we have the Big Bang force is more than gravitational forces, everything will keep on expanding till infinite expansion. So here it comes equal and opposite forces of expansion and contraction. Because of that, it remains at one point. It does not expand, it does not contract, and we can see this stability in life. So beautiful examples he gives, and he goes on to say, see, our life, our universe is a place which breeds life. There are a lot of life supporting properties. If you see all of these properties, equal and opposite charges of atom, the anomalous behavior of water, the equal and opposite forces of expansion and contraction, it is signaling to one very important thing. And the point which everything is signaling to, like this universe has lots and lots of properties which helps us maintaining life. This universe is being designed in such a way that if we have any problem, we have its solution existing in the creation. If we have any kind of diseases, there are herbs which can counteract those diseases. This universe has everything which supports life. And even he says, even one property coming by chance to exist and to help us is very obscure. What about bringing all those properties together which combiningly helps us and move us and gives us a more supporting environment which can help us moving forward in our life is completely not possible. So there is some design which has been existing from micro to the macro level. First important lesson what we understand from this is that our universe breeds life, helps supporting life, and there are wonderful properties. So these properties cannot come on its own. It cannot be the result of some Big Bang happening somewhere. Big Bang only can give destruction, not maintenance, not creation, for that matter. So that's our first logic what we understand. Second logic what we understand is very beautiful logic. So this all gives thing to one direction. All this what we discuss is intelligence. There is some intelligence which is working behind it, right? So let us. So what I would do is I would want you to see one beautiful video. We discuss that about the universe, and that would be discussing about our body itself. That how much intelligence is there in our body itself, how much it operates, how it operates. So I'll be playing this and imagine what we just saw. This body itself had a lot of intricate designing, complex mechanism by which we're able to survive, and it cannot just happen on its own, So that's the first idea what we discussed. There's a beautiful design both in this creation from micro to the macro level, and even in our life itself, there's a huge designing which has gone into the place. The second reason, the second logic, what I would say, is the logic of intelligence. And there was another scientist who just gave a very wonderful point of view. He says that intelligence is always a precondition for any kind of creation, because without intelligence we cannot have creation. So that scientist was B.D. Jobson. He's again a Nobel laureate in physics, Cavendish Research Laboratories in UK. He gives one very interesting logic. What he says is, let's go to the Mars. And after going to the Mars, let us see how do we observe different phenomena happening here in this particular Earth. Let's say there are few houses are being made on the Earth, and workers are working, and everything is happening. A house is being created on the Earth. That's what he says. And if you observe how the house is being created from the Mars, how you can explain that? Yes, you can explain everything by different phenomena, like the phenomena he says. You can think that the muscles of the laborer are being working according to the muscles contraction, because when we lift the bricks, the muscles contract and expand. So biomedical can explain how the worker are able to lift the brick. The movement of bricks can be explained through law of mechanics. We have a lot of mechanics, how we apply certain forces, it has gravitational pull, and we have to give equal and opposite, greater force to lift it, this kind of things. And law of chemical engineering can explain the binding effect between the two bricks. We have cement, it has all those chemical composition, which we then mix with water, it creates a cementing effect between two bricks, and that's how everything can be explained. So, but although a person can explain all these different phenomena happening and can say, oh, see, I figured out how this house is being created. But is that the complete understanding from a scientific perspective if we see? How the house is being built is a scientific way of understanding. Is that a right or complete understanding? No. There is an architect, contractor who is working behind it, isn't it? It's not only those phenomena happening are responsible, chemical formula and this and that, law of mechanics and biomedical science. It is not only these factors which is making the house into existence. There is somebody who designed it, architect. He got approved by the township, the contractor who has a lot of people and who is giving direction to all those workers. Architect, according to compliances, he'll be making the design, will be getting it certified, and then workers will be coming under the contract, he'll be working, then house will come. But again, is it a complete understanding? No. Because there has to be somebody who wants to build a house, and there should be purpose behind it. If I want to live in certain places, it is me who will give direction to the architect. I want a house like this for this particular purpose. I want this to be sold out to people. I want this to be for the purpose of guest house, or I myself wants to live in this house with my family. Me as a person will choose according to my purpose what kind of house I want to design. I would be delegating it to architect, and that's how the entire thing will flow on. Simply from the Mars, if you just explain, oh, these are things happening, that other thing happening, no, it is not a complete picture at all. Similarly, what point we want to draw from there is, there are many ways scientists can explain how this creation is working. They can explain there is gravitational forces, they can explain there is electromagnetic forces, they can explain different phenomena what are happening in this universe. But simply by their explaining certain phenomena, what they're able to discover, can we rely only on that knowledge? No. There is somebody who is bringing all those things into a place, breeding the life, and with a certain purpose in the mind. You see how important it is? So if scientist says simply because of these reasons, because we can explain something, that's why there is no existence of God. Explanation does not mean there is not a cause. A very important point to understand from this particular logic. So there are many more logics to understand. So science is being made possible by consciousness. Because we are conscious being, we are able to observe things around us, and that's why we are able to formulate different things. That's how science builds up its knowledge, is because of consciousness. But science cannot explain consciousness. The way we have this body designed, and because of my consciousness, I can fix up certain things, I can heal myself. Similarly, there is a universal consciousness which is existing. And this universal consciousness is the one which is making the things work the way they are. So that's how we understand that this body have an individual consciousness by which we are able to experience and live life. So we also have universal consciousness which is making this world possible. Without consciousness, science itself would not exist. Existence of consciousness in this creation indicates an intelligence behind it. It's a very important point to note. So that's how we understand the whole point, that there is an intelligence behind this creation. It is not happening on its own, and it is a huge purpose that we'll be discovering in further sessions. So that's what we discussed today. Our agenda of this topic was simply to make us realize that there is some higher forces which are involved in creating this universe. There are many atheistic philosophies, atheistic theories proposed by many scientists with a vested interest, so we should not fall prey to them, and we should see clearly from science itself that how this creation has certain power which is functioning around it. So next topic would be in continuation with this, and we'll exactly conclude this topic like we concluded the last topic. So first we discussed we are not these bodies, then we discussed who we actually are. In this section also, first is negation of some of our myth, and then developing a positive knowledge around it. So that's how we conclude this session, and now we'll be moving towards quiz, and then we'll be moving toward question answer sessions. So I request all of you to please enthusiastically participate in this quiz, and we'll be starting now. The first question is, scientist believes creation happens on its own. Is it true or no? Is it right? Does creation happens on its own?
No.
No.
No, the answer is no. It doesn't happen on its own. I think all of us are clear in this point that it doesn't happen on its own. The second question is, at what level can we find intelligence in the creation? Only at microscopic level? Only at macroscopic level? Somewhere or everywhere? What's the answer?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yes, you can see it everywhere. Just that we have to open our eyes. And it's a task for all of you. Next 1 week, you can start observing things with this lens. That how you can see the plant, how the plant grows, how the plant turns toward the sunlight whenever. You can always, with different varieties of understanding, we can try to discover this intelligence, how it is all pervading in our universe. The next question is it rational to conclude that all life supporting properties support together without intelligence?
No.
All the life supporting properties are coming together to support life, but it is without intelligence. What's the answer? The answer is
No.
no. Yes. Let us move to the next question. How can we understand this mighty creation? Only by studying scientific laws, or by understanding its design, its purpose, and its intent?
B.
B.
The answer is, how we can understand this mighty creation? The answer is B. Yes. Last question is, can science explain consciousness?
No.
Can science explain consciousness? The answer is
No.
no. Yes, I think all of you have got the idea what we just wanted to explain from this particular module. And now we'll be quickly moving toward question answer sessions. If anybody have any doubts, any questions.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment and share.